Hi there everybody, hope you're all well in this lockdown period again still. It's not until you start assembling parts that you realise that some of the bits that came off were not the right bits, and such is the case with this Norton oil tank. When I previously fitted the tank in the last video, I quickly realised that there was something amiss. These two studs that go into the bottom of the oil tank on the Norton 99 were actual bolts that went up, and it was a struggle to get them on, to be honest, and the lining of the tank and the battery box were a bit difficult. And I've subsequently found that they should be studs, so I've ordered some with a bumper pack of goodies that arrived today. And these studs, I was a bit concerned, the 26 TPI, and they didn't want to go in at first, and I think that's probably because of the plating, because now that I've run the nuts up and down these studs a couple of times, they're now turning okay. So I'm going to refit the tank and the battery box again, because it's quite clear in the instructions on the manual that there should be some rubber parts to isolate, I guess, for vibration, and mine doesn't have that. So I've made a gasket, or rubber gasket, to go on the bottom of the plate, and I've used a rubber grommet and a system to attach this bracket here to isolate it, and I'll show you how I'll fit that too. So today I've had some parts arrive, probably about 3 or 4 different envelopes all arriving at once, which is fantastic. The first being a service manual for my YG1F from the British Motorcycle Museum archive, which is just a photocopy, but great. I've now some working diagrams of how the Yamaha fits. The Norton bits, which I've showed you on the oil tank, which are the studs and the nuts. Some other Norton bits and pieces. These are the seat buttons to stop the seat banging on the frame. I've got a cotter pin and HT lead ends, the seal for the primary case, the inspection rubber, and yeah, so that's all ready to go back on the Norton. Then the BSA bits came as well. I've got some new HT lead. Not sure whether I'll use that. I might do, it looks quite good against bike. I've got some other bits and pieces here. These are the main stand for the Bsa 65 Lightning, and the correct rubber for the tank mount. But that says it's the kickstart rubber, which also is the same part number according to the supplier as the main stand. This is the main stand fitting. Mine's just got bolts at either end currently, and I wanted to put the right parts on the Lightning. But I have to say, you know, come on guys, the price of these bits, everything seems fairly reasonable, but this so-called stainless steel piece of metal with 2 holes drilled through it, guess how much that is? I mean, you know, 10 quid. That's about $15. It's supposed to be stainless steel, but is it? Doesn't look like it. Maybe it is. Anyway, let's not dwell on that. Restoring bikes is expensive. 18p for a spit pin. I should have got 2. I've got loads. I don't know why I even put that on. I just obviously wrote the part number down and ordered it. So anyway, let's not be negative. Let's just get all these bits on my bike. I've got plenty to do now. Bung for the 4-gallon Bsa Spitfire tank, and it goes as part of a bracket which I'm missing, but I did order the rubber bung anyway, and it turns out to be a piece of airline which has been chopped off, but I'm not going to complain because it's 18p, and if it's the right dimensions, who cares. But it's interesting to note that the overlong seat rubber mounts were also airline hose, and I've chopped them off to the correct length Oh, some wear on that, look. I'll be mounting the seat. This is one of the frustrations you get when you're putting these old bikes back together. When I dismantled it, I just took everything apart and bagged it all up, assuming that the bits that I took off were the correct bits, and it appears that I've got something missing here, because on this one there's a distance piece here which has got a small hole in, which accepts the new bolt I bought for the headlight shell. But on this side, as you can see, there's a dirty great big wide bit. So when I looked in the bag full of bits, the previous assembler has basically ignored that, put a load of washers on the inside of here and used the bolt, so the headlight shell is not fitted correctly. So I've ordered 2 of these distance pieces. You can't just order one, and they'll be coming in a couple of days time, so I can't fit the headlight shell. I wanted to put the headlight shell on and the battery box and the oil tank all in place, so I could continue to make sure that my wiring harness was going in the right place. But I think I've got some issues with the fitting of these, and I'll explain what I've done with the oil tank and show you what I've done to amend the problem that I had with that. With the isolation of the vibration, you need to put some rubber bits in, which I didn't have. So the last video showed you this assembly of the oil tank and the battery box was wrong, and I've had to take them off, and I'm going to put them back on properly. As you remember, I'd put the battery box on and the oil tank back on, and then as I was reading through the manual, I found that this should be a rubber on the bottom here, so I've made this one out of some roofing rubber which you can buy, so that will isolate the tank and the battery box from vibration, hopefully off that engine plate. And then if I go around to the other side, the tank's off here, and I did find that the tank should actually have rubber isolation with a distance piece. The other thing I didn't do last time was put the tool tray on, and it's a good job that I am doing it now, because trying to get this bottom bolt in with the tank and the battery box is a bit of a pig, so I've done that now. As for nuts and bolts, I'm using Whitworth threads for most of the carriers, and cycle thread as required when the threads are pre-done. I mean, this one for example, they're Whitworth, and so I'm using Whitworth there, and they're all stainless steel. And what I've done is I've bought the 3 most common sizes in about, I don't know how long's that, 1.5 inches, and then I can just cut them down to the length as required. So that is my next job, to chop the 3 for the tool tray down to the right size, and continue to build this back up again. Just while I'm on about these nuts and bolts, they're actually manufactured locally out of stainless steel. I've gone for all stainless steel fasteners, and I know some of the purists don't like that, but tough, that's what I'm doing. One thing I did find when I was putting the battery box and the oil tank back on was trying to get the alignment right, and I found that the best way of doing it is to put the top bolts in first on both sides, so both the tank and the battery box on these top bolts, before adjusting it on the bottom bolts. And they do have U-shaped holes in both the tank and the battery box, which suggests that's designed that way, so you can move it just a little bit so that the tank and the battery box line up. A top tip. Oh, I hate that phrase. So after all that, I'm back to the point where I started. Everything's bolted up. It's got the rubber on it now for the isolation from the vibrations, but in fact I've actually gone a step backwards, because now the primary case is off. Probably saw in those spares that I had the seals for these here. I'm going to have a look at those. I was hoping to get a new rubber seal for this, but they're out of stock, so I might have to use the old one, although they're prone to leaking. And also I want to do the primary chain tension to make sure that's absolutely spot on, and you can use these adjusters here on this bike. It actually has two, it's got one on either side. I believe this bike may have been raced in the past, hence it's got two adjusters on it, one for either side, which just really makes sure the gearbox is absolutely solid and can't move. So thank you very much for looking, and next time I will be attempting either the primary chain or I might even do the wiring, even though I don't have those parts yet at the headlight. I'm going to stick the headlight shell in loosely with some bolts, just some bucksheet bolts, and do all the wiring maybe. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.